Welcome back to the Explainer. Today we're diving straight into an invisible technology that is literally fundamentally transforming modern transit systems right under our noses. We are going to look at how engineers are essentially ripping out the traditional traffic lights along our railways and moving them directly into the driver's cab.
So think about trying to squeeze a dozen more cars onto a highway that's already at a dead stop. It's tough, right? Well, for railways, building more physical infrastructure to solve that problem is incredibly slow and wildly expensive. So the real answer? It doesn't lie in pouring more concrete. It relies on leveraging smarter data.
Here's what we're going to cover in today's Explainer. 1. Beyond lineside signals. 2. The mechanics of in-cab signaling. 3. Calculating safe braking curves. 4. The massive cost hurdle. And 5. The data integrity threat. Let's get into it.
Section 1. Beyond lineside signals. To really understand the future here, we first need to look at the severe limitations of the traditional infrastructure that we're leaving behind.
You know, traditional railway signaling is honestly a lot like driving your car. The driver literally looks out the window for physical green, yellow, or red lights along the track, and those lights dictate fixed blocks of space. It's a highly visual, manual process, and because of human reaction times, it requires huge, inefficient gaps between trains. Modern in-cab signaling completely flips this script. It forces a total shift from visual driving to continuous data links. Instead of hunting for a green light outside in the rain or fog, the driver relies on dynamic, real-time speeds transmitted directly to a digital display right on their dashboard.
And this data-driven approach, it's a real game changer. Under the old fixed block system, a train basically owns a massive static chunk of track, and absolutely no other train can enter until that entire block is completely cleared. But with moving block separation, which is a huge cornerstone of communications-based train control, or CBTC, the safe zone actually moves fluidly with the train. By untethering trains from those rigid physical blocks, railways can safely run them much, much closer together.
All right, Section 2, the mechanics of in-cab signaling. Let's explore exactly how this technological leap actually functions out in the real world.
Simply put, in-cab signaling eliminates line-side signals completely. It does this by transmitting what's called a movement authority directly to the train itself. You can think of it like an invisible tether. It uses radio waves and track beacons to safely guide the train, actively telling it exactly how far and how fast it is allowed to go at any given split second. And this isn't just some theoretical concept. It delivers absolutely massive real-world results. For example, when the London Underground upgraded the Victoria Line to communications-based train control, they obviously couldn't widen the physical tunnels. But by simply utilizing this continuous radio update system and shifting to moving blocks, they surged capacity from 30 trains per hour to an incredible 36 trains per hour during peak times. That is a huge jump in efficiency. So let's look at how this builds into a standardized system, specifically the European Train Control System, or ETCS Level 2. It essentially relies on a continuous three-step loop. First, physical track beacons, which we call balises, send exact pinpoint location data up to the train. Second, a secure radio network transmits the movement authority we just talked about. And third, the onboard computer uses all that data to compute its own safe braking curve dynamically. Because these steps happen continuously, those old-fashioned trackside signals are rendered completely obsolete.
Which brings us perfectly to Section 3, calculating safe braking curves. Let's dig into the core algorithm that keeps this whole invisible system from crashing.
Now, when you're operating a high-speed train, like the French TGV, human biology actually becomes the bottleneck. At over 300 kilometers per hour, a human driver simply cannot reliably read trackside signs anymore. They just blur right past. Therefore, the onboard computer has to take over the math. It constantly factors in current speed, the exact distance to the end of its authority, and even the specific gradient of the track ahead.
Because of this setup, the system lets trains calculate their own highly specific safe braking curves. Rather than relying on static, one-size-fits-all rules that are permanently built into the physical track infrastructure, the train independently determines exactly when it must start braking. It combines the route's real-time data with its own specific train parameters, things like its total weight and braking capability, to ensure it stops safely well before its movement authority ends.
Moving on to Section 4, the massive cost hurdle. Because, as with all incredible engineering leaps, this technology is not magic. It comes with severe, real-world complications.
The sheer scale of the financial reality here is frankly staggering.
The multi-billion-dollar hurdle is that you cannot just upgrade the tracks and call it a day. If you want to eliminate physical signals, you have to meticulously retrofit every single existing train that uses that line with very expensive onboard computers. You're installing brand new trackside infrastructure like those balises and radio masts, overhauling decades of operational rules, and forcing total compatibility across highly diverse fleets. It is an incredibly expensive prerequisite to get this system off the ground.
And finally, Section 5, the data integrity threat. We need to talk about the danger of bad data.
Beyond the massive financial cost, there is a profound invisible risk associated with taking your eyes off the physical track and putting your full trust into a computer. Because the onboard system has no eyes of its own, it relies entirely on the data integrity of its electronic map, its odometry, which is its distance tracking, and the train's encoded physical characteristics. Think about it. If a human driver sees it's raining ahead, they naturally know to brake earlier. A computer only knows what it is told. If train parameters are encoded incorrectly at the start of a journey, the algorithm might advise the driver to brake far, far too late.
To put that into perspective, imagine you're driving a massive, heavy freight truck, but your GPS algorithm calculates your safe stopping distance as if you were riding a bicycle. You will inevitably brake too late. No question. In the rail world, if a heavy freight train is accidentally encoded with the braking profile of a nimble, light passenger train, the system completely miscalculates that braking curve. The train will shoot right past its end of authority, resulting in what the industry calls a signal past it danger. It's an absolutely critical safety hazard born entirely from a simple data entry error.
So that brings us to our final thought. As transit systems worldwide transition to a purely data-driven railway, where invisible radio waves replace giant steel gantries and algorithms replace human intuition, we have to ask ourselves a tough question. Does this massive leap in network capacity truly justify the multi-billion-dollar price tag and the immense zero margin for error challenge of data perfection? It's a fascinating engineering tightrope for sure. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you next time as we continue to decode the incredible systems that run our world.